Hey, this is Rydo. It's the Steam Halloween sale for 2018, so I figured I'd make a video covering this. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to ask people to friend me on Steam for any reason whatsoever. I'm trying to get more people to friend me on Steam. But also, part of the way that I ask people to support my channel is to gift me games on my wish list, which I am working on right now for an end of the year cleanup process. I'm spending lots and lots of hours going through a very long wish list. It's quite a mess right now, and it'll be much better by probably December, and December will be when those episodes air to see me cover everything that was on my wish list, and then I decided to either remove or move to the secondary follow list. Now for this Halloween sale, doesn't seem like there's too much. It's not super long, October 29th to November 1st, and it seems pretty basic for a Steam sale. It doesn't seem like you get any kind of discounts, any kind of trading cards. There's no clicker game or idle game. There really is nothing on the Steam store, as far as I can tell, that looks different besides the top banner. And so that really leaves you with two divisions here. You have the top banner that you can click on that will show you the top sellers games, the games they want to highlight. And then you have a bunch of other lesser known games that are discounted. In fact, half of my wish list, which we'll look at in a second, is on some form of discount, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of games are permanently on discount. So the thing that my wish list and games I already own can add as far as information here is it shows an idea of the games I'd like to cover on my channel, if it's on the wish list, probably. That's almost certainly the case. And if it's in my library, then it means it's a game I am ready, well, I am able at least to cover or have covered. Left 4 Dead 2, for example, is a game that I got in buying all the Valve games. The Valve bundle would be probably a pretty good deal to purchase right now. We can see that. Just as a comparison, the Valve Complete Pack, this bundle information, would sell at, well, actually a considerable amount of this is not on sale. Interesting. I would have thought all of it would have been. So honestly, from having already looked at the Halloween sales, it doesn't seem like there's a great amount of games that are being discounted. This seems like this is the introductory discount, and I suspect heavily, and every time I come back to this page it's going to re-filter everything in a different order, but it's the same links. I imagine the November sale will be the big one. It would probably be the November one. The December one, I doubt will probably be back to this. Having 3 months of sales at the end of the year for video games kind of sucks. Personally, everything seems to happen around October, November, December as far as things that I want to purchase. Whether that's video game things or just other things around the world. And around real life. And that's true for most people in the United States too, is that they go into massive credit card debt for the last 3 months of a year, and then they have to spend the remaining 9 months of the next year paying down that credit card debt, which is really sucky. And I kind of wish these holidays and sales would balance out a little bit more, but that's probably not going to happen. So we have Rocket League. I'm questioning maybe if Rocket League is losing its relevancy as it's getting older. It came out July 7th, 2015, but personally I'd like to own it. I may only make like a 30-minute spotlight on this game since it's mostly a multiplayer game anyways, whereas most games that I cover are complete playthroughs beginning to end, but sometimes I do spotlight things. Vampire is 33% off, but this is a 2018 game, and you're not going to get any really big discounts buying a game that's a year old or less than a year old. The big discounts are going to be for things that are 2-3 years old, and often you can get lots of better discounts just through other sources. So it's worth mentioning that checking out the Humble Bundle store might be a better deal, particularly since most Humble Bundles allow you to change where the money goes, and you can give 100% of the money to a charity if you feel like you want to support that charity. Whereas the spin-off of Humble Bundle, Fanatical, that was because Humble Bundle's parent company was bought by, I believe, IGN. They're trying to put more and more people to go to Fanatical, where I don't think any of that money goes to a charity, or that's at least not the focus. Killing Floors, again. I've covered Killing Floor 1, so I'd want to cover Killing Floor 2 to continue my coverage on it. It's probably not a game I'd play a lot of. In fact, since so many of these games are probably multiplayer horror games, first-person shooter type games, there's not a good chance that I would play some of these. I would cover Vampire because it's more of a single-player story. I probably wouldn't touch We Happy Few with a 10-foot pole until it's down to like $9. And honestly, I would really like to see some fans mod it so that it skips major parts of that game and just shows the storyline. The way We Happy Few was kickstarted and then wanted to be a style of game that the people who were funding and hyped about it really didn't want it to be. Like, the fans of the concept, the general concept of We Happy Few, want it to be a single player BioShock style game with maybe a little bit of first person shooting or something like that. Instead, it becomes this survivalist survival resource simulation game with open world elements and a lot of side missions that don't feel that great. I think there should be actually several games that are modded in a similar way, where it's just like the mod would take a character, put them in the point where a cutscene would start, let you see that cutscene, and then take that character and just magically teleport them to the point where the next cutscene starts, and eliminates the middle work. Mass Effect is another game that might benefit greatly from that, particularly Mass Effect 1. Make something that was a 60-hour game or longer in the first place, just cut out all the grinding, cut out the gameplay mechanics that don't really contribute to this, and just let us see the story, which is all I'm really interested in as far as We Happy Few. Also, We Happy Fews just didn't get a lot of support from Gearbox Publishing. I want to point that out too. Is it did get a lot of advertisement for making a deal with the publishing company. Left 4 Dead 2, totally worth playing at least once. It is a multiplayer game. Vermintide, questionable. Like, I haven't covered Vermintide 1, and it's probably not really relevant to cover Vermintide 1 because I bet the player base is close to dead. Similar situation would probably happen if I tried to play Vermintide 2 right now or in a few months. I want to finish the Tomb Raider reboot series. Shadow of the Tomb Raider right now is discounted for 34% off, although interestingly enough, this game is mixed reviewed right now because nearly exactly a month after it came out on Steam, they discounted it a couple weeks ago for $15. And so all the people who had bought the premium version and pre-ordered everything for $60, $80, maybe even $100, depending on what pre-order version they got, felt very screwed over, which inherently I think should be taken by the developers as you didn't make as good of a game as you should have, because if you had made a game where people loved it, they really wouldn't care about the price that other people were paying to get into the game. But maybe $15 was just too much. You can see the Tomb Raider Croft Edition, when not discounted, is over $100. And yeah, so there's just was a major backlash on this. You can see like 196 negative reviews when that happened, and it happened for quite a while, and now it's slowly tapering off. So yeah, people were not happy about that, and one can only assume that the reason why it was on sale is because the first month sales were not high enough for what Square Enix, I believe, wanted. It's not high enough for Crystal Dynamics. I wouldn't be surprised if we find out that Crystal Dynamics gets shut down on poor sales of the Tomb Raider third game. Next we have The Forest, which is an open world crafting survival game. It seems to be very positive. I don't want to look at every single game on this list that is listed, because that's pretty much most of them. So yeah, if you want to play something that's slightly like Minecraft but with realistic graphics, maybe The Forest is a good choice. Notice a lot of these are just 33% discounted, and generally speaking, I when shopping want to get discounts of 75%, 80%, 90% off. I don't want what is token discounts. But a lot of these top games are so new, that's not really a case. Now, Dying Light almost is too good of a deal, I would guess would be the way to say it, because Dying Light is from Techland, the developers of the good Dead Island game, the first Dead Island, and they went on to make this. It's a zombie game that they added a considerable amount of DLC for free to. I think there's like one bit of paid DLC, and so to get this for $16 is a pretty good deal. Some of these games aren't on my wish list because like this is the co-op version of Don't Starve, so I wouldn't play it. But if you do play co-op, that makes sense. Resident Evil 7, totally would love to play Resident Evil 7. $20 is not a terrible price, but there is this point, certainly on my channel, where like I didn't play Resident Evil 7 and cover it when it was brand new, so I might as well take my time with it, and maybe even get it down to $10. Canarium is an adventure Lovecraftian horror indie game that I have on my wish list, and I don't remember, which is just a testament to how many games are on the wish list, which is too many. Metro Redux bundle is pretty good at $10.15. These are probably where you're going to get the better deals. Zombie Army Trilogy is, I believe, probably a Left 4 Dead style clone game. It looks like it, definitely. It's less than $10. Grim Fandango, an old point and click adventure game, although Grim Fandango is probably one of the worst introductory point-and-click games you could play. If you, it really is for people who love the LucasArts style of games and the Double Fine style point-and-click adventure games, and this should be somewhere near the bottom of the list of those games because Grim Fandango takes on the 3D a 3D animation style, and it's very rough kind of tank controls of the character. You're not asked to do a lot, but you are spending a lot of time walking around and adjusting your character to the place. BioShock Remastered Edition for less than $5. That sounds like a very, very good game. I don't know why it has a mixed review still. I guess perhaps there was something in the remastering that people didn't like. If I recall correctly, when I covered BioShock Remastered, there did feel like there was something that had been tweaked and changed with the visuals, and it had made the game, the remastered version, look and feel differently. Maybe a little less horrific. So maybe you go back and get the original BioShock, which I imagine you can still get. Crypto the Necrodancer is a music game, and I have no rhythm, so this is on my wish list, but it probably shouldn't be. I'd try it, but I'd probably fail. Danganronpa, another episode. Ultra Despair Girls is a side story in the Danganronpa series, which is I'm not even sure what kind of game it is. It's tagged as an action game, but yeah, let's see what it is. How this really story rich. The Danganronpa series is a series of very weird, like horrific, I think JRPG style games. Yeah, this feels like it might be just a simplistic shooter game. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure what kind of game that is, and you probably only want this if you're familiar with the other Danganronpa games. In a similar way, if you want to play the Danganronpa games, you probably want to play the Zero Escape, Zero Time Dilemma games, which are horror escape the room puzzle games, and I totally would want to play this. In all fairness, even though this is 30% off and this is 40% off, and those don't sound like great discounts, these are super niche horror games, and they probably aren't ever going to be discounted by much. So $23 for this is probably the best deal you're going to get, whereas 80% off for Crypt of the Necrodancer for $3 is a much better deal, but I wouldn't be surprised if this goes down even cheaper. Detention, I believe, is a Korean horror point-and-click style game. Again, on the wish list. I recently covered Layers of Fear. It should be airing on my channel right now, or maybe it wrapped up. Didn't really like the game, but they have announced Layers of Fear 2, so now would be a great time to grab it if you are interested in what is effectively a walking simulator with a lot of jump scares. That's pretty much the best way I can describe Layers of Fear. If you're not going to be affected by the jump scares, though, you're not going to have much of an entertainment experience with it, and that was the problem with me. Prey, on the other side, the P is covered up, is more of a BioShock clone, a more recent game than BioShock Infinite or BioShock 1 or 2, so I definitely want to play this. At $15, this game is stupidly cheap, considering it's not that old. Dying Light Bad Blood is, I believe, a not hugely well received PUBG clone, Battle Royale clone of Dying Light, which the idea sounds fine in general, but by the time this came out, it's been played out. Every developer has tried to make a Battle Royale mode in their games, and charging $18 for a side story, it was not selling. People weren't buying on that one. Castlevania Lord of Shadow 2, I've covered Castlevania Lord of Shadow 1. So there's a lot of games here on the wish list and just in general on sale right now that would be continuations of games that I already have playlists for and have already covered all the way. We already talked about Zero Escape, Zero Time Dilemma. There is a bundle of games called the Noonery bundle that this is in. You probably want to get all of them. Death Road to Canada is a game that I'm not really sure I want to play, but a lot of people have hyped it up and it is reviewed very positively, so I keep it on the wish list because I'm just bowing to the masses and saying yes, that's a game that it seems like are worth playing. The Dead Rising franchise, though, I think for the most part I've decided there's no reason at this anymore to play Dead Rising. The development company, the office that was making the Dead Rising series, has been shut down. Dead Rising 1 was probably good, Dead Rising 2 was probably good, but Dead Rising 3, 4, and the other side game wasn't. So you have more bad games or mediocre games in the Dead Rising series than you do good games, which seems really silly. Like, you would almost think that the Dead Rising series should just get an annual release every year and be always a little generic and always a little simple, kind of like an Assassin's Creed game, because what Dead Rising could help a development company, programmers, is you're going to constantly want to push the number of enemies and AIs you can have on the screen with just more zombies, more zombies, more zombies. And that's not even what I think Dead Rising 4 did. I think they reduced the number of zombies. And so you're not solving a programming problem there that could be used in other games. And you're also not really making great games, so it just kind of died. We have a game called Pinstripe here, which looks to be a dark adventure, probably a point-and-click adventure. There's a lot of more recent games that don't want to cover that call themselves point-and-click adventure games when they really are. Alien Isolation, I think I own most of the Alien games that are on Steam. I'm thinking at some point I might do a series and spotlight or cover all of them. The Room 2 I own. Have I covered it? I don't think I have. So if you could get the Room 1 pretty cheap, which you probably could, paying $1.25 for the Room 2 makes a lot of sense. It's a mobile game that's ported to Steam and does a pretty good job at it, where you have this mechanical box like device, and on the boxes several different puzzles that you have to solve. Amnesia: The Dark Descent for $4. Questionable whether that's really worth it at that price. Amnesia in particular is a game that I think you can get for almost free if you just follow enough people on Twitter. Amnesia being basically a walking simulator again, as far as these horror games are concerned. If there really isn't a fighting gameplay mechanic beyond using a flashlight, I'm not hugely impressed by those kind of games. Monster Prom is a weird one because it is a game funded by another YouTuber, so there's some weird disclosure, I suppose, that would need to be mentioned when covering it, but it does look like a very interesting game as a dating sim between monsters. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines was rated very positively. I'm not 100% sure I would want to play it, but again, rated very positively. You may note that Hello Neighbor is not on my wish list, and I think that's for a very specific reason. It's mixed reviewed. It had a lot of popularity because streamers were playing it, but I don't think it really is that good of a game, and I'm still not 100% sure that it's a finished product. It was getting covered in early access, and I think people burned out on it. Whereas we have Remothered Tormented Fathers, which is another horror adventure game. And then we have Fran Brow, which is a psychological horror point-and-click game. Let's see. The End is Nigh, which is a game that particularly scares me because it's probably a Super Meat Boy clone. I probably shouldn't have this on my wishlist because it's probably way too difficult for my fingers to actually play. Miscreated is mixed. Let's see. We have a game called Pamela, which is a survival sci-fi game that's mostly positive. We have the Dead Island Definitive Edition, which is kind of not the Definitive Edition, or at least it makes some weird changes, kind of like Bioshock Remastered. I'd like to own it to compare it to Dead Island 1, but the original version, but I don't think there's major changes that happen there. It might also have been patched. You can see it's mostly positive now, which I feel like it was less. We have Outlast, another sort of walking simulator horror game, which I don't think has any real gameplay mechanic other than escaping. You have Dungeons 3, which is a Dungeon Keeper clone, Dungeon Keeper being an old strategy game where you were running a dungeon and controlling the demons and playing a real-time strategy game to increase your resources and strengthen your army for an eventual attack. We have Night in the Woods, which I really wouldn't put in the horror category. You may take note that we have not seen a single game that feels like it's kid-friendly. Generally speaking, particularly on PC, there aren't any kid-friendly games that are also horror games. Not a lot of them, at least. You've got like Costume Quest 1 and 2, which is a Halloween trick-or-treating games, but they're not horrific. But actual games that are designed for kids in general are very, very limited on PC, which I suppose is fine for kids. I imagine you give them the console and adults play on PC. Next we have Beholder. I'm not sure exactly how I got this game, but I did. It's a surveillance style game where you're in charge of spying on people, I believe. Inside is the spiritual successor to the game Limbo, which I covered, so I'd want to have that. That being said, it's still pretty new, so it's $8.99 still. Limbo here, on the other hand, is $1.99, so definitely play that. Through the Woods is another. Well, this might be a bit more of a game because you're seeing other characters, so maybe you actually have a gameplay mechanic here and it's not just a walking simulator horror game. I'd have to look at it in more detail. We have Salt and Sanctuary, which is a Dark Souls clone, I suppose is what you would call it. But it's a little bit more RPG and it's 2D animation, and it puts a different spin on it. In all honesty, I probably have a better chance of finishing a game like Salt and Sanctuary than I do finishing Dark Souls 1, 2, or 3, because I don't think I have enough skill. I don't think I could ever get good enough to play it. Now, I had Friday the 13th, the game, on my wishlist for the longest time, but there's legal troubles around it. The game never really had all of its bugs fixed, and even if it was a perfectly running game without legal troubles, the asynchronous gameplay style of these style of games just never seems fun. Having a bunch of players have to play as the camp counselors and run away in fear, and then one person play as this slowly moving, lurking killer character, works for about one game, and then it gets boring. It's really questionable if anybody should purchase that one. Strange Brigade is a team-based action-adventure game. Again, not really too much of a horror game. Darksiders 2 is an adventure hack-and-slash RPG game. It's nowhere as good as Darksiders 1, but if you own Darksiders 1, the War Mastered Edition, I suppose is what you would want to buy now. Getting this makes a little bit of sense because Darksiders 3 is coming out, I believe, at the end of November. So I'm very excited for that. I would love if somebody would support my channel by gifting me Darksiders 3. There's a few games, like I'd say there's probably 3 games that are at the top of my wish list as far as if I could afford these games, I'd drop everything and play them right now and have the coverage out extremely quick. Those games would be Myst 3, Myst 4, and Darksiders 3. Whereas lots of other games on the wish list are there as a filtered, or now twice filtered, as is what I'm doing right now, is I'm filtering them again. It's a twice filtered list, a curated list of games that I want to cover, or at least think are at a good enough level of quality to cover. That being said, also if a fan commented and say, hey, you should play this game, I would add it to the wish list, or at least I'd look at it and then probably add it to the wish list, because getting direct feedback from fans who know the kind of games I cover and know me better than, say, a random video game journalist somewhere or advertisement somewhere would be very helpful information. We have this game called Sundered. I don't remember this, but it looks very interestingly animated. We have Soma, which is a underwater horror game. A little bit of a walking simulator, but I think it has some small puzzles there. I believe Soma added a patch where you can play in a very easy mode and you won't ever die, because there's a monster that's chasing you that if it catches you, you'll die. Since it is mostly just a story-based walking game, like the people were having trouble with getting caught and then dying and then having to start at checkpoints. Next we have one of the very first games I covered, Plague Inc. Evolved, which I already have in my library. I don't believe there's any DLC for it. There have been updates for it, but I think you just get them. Now, as far as horror VR, I'm almost certainly never going to own a VR headset, so most VR games are not on my wish list. However, there are a few that are proving themselves to be capable of being played outside of VR modes and still looking pretty good. So I can't 100% guarantee that Rise of Insanity or Monstrum or Don't Knock Twice can be played without VR, but I'm fairly certain that I just looked at all the games that start with the letter M, and I started with A basically, so Monstrum and Don't Knock Twice would have been games that I had already looked at. Well, actually I haven't filtered everything out for them, so I can only kind of guarantee Don't Knock Twice is playable without a VR headset. Monstrum and Rise of Insanity might be. Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion, HG Renovation. This is an interesting game because it looks like it's a kid-friendly, just silly horror game, but it slowly tricks you into actually being scared, because there's actual scares in it, and and the things you're seeing in the cutscene are designed to set expectations so that they can be subverted later. A lot of these VR games too are not hugely well reviewed because, for example, Killing Floor Incursion, I imagine, is a VR game where you stand in one place and just shoot a bunch of enemies with very bad AI that run directly towards you, and then maybe you teleport yourself every now and then. I really haven't seen any great examples of horror games. Paranormal Activity: The Lost Soul, I think, is a pretty visually attractive game, but it's not on the wish list in VR. The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, I've covered that in the non-VR game, so I don't think it's probably going to be too different to cover it in the VR mode, although it might be considerably worse to play it in VR just because of how much walking you do in The Vanishing of Ethan Carter. It's basically a walking simulator with a small number of puzzles, and if you have to teleport yourself around, that would add some more effort to it. We have a game called Organ Quarter, which I've never heard of. We have a game called Dead Secret. I assume that Dead Secret can be played without VR because it's still on my wish list. And they all seem to kind of go in the same direction. Emily Wants to Play. It's probably not much of a game. You have to be careful too that I know there are YouTubers out there that are covering and playing Emily Wants to Play, for example, and they make it seem like it might be an interesting, fun game, and maybe it really doesn't matter for $2.44, particularly if you've already invested hundreds of dollars for a VR headset. But honestly, these kind of games are not that good. Moving on, we have horror free-to-play games that are being highlighted. So Cube Escape Paradox is part of the Rusty Lake series. So this part is free to play, but there's several other games that you probably will want to play also that you'd then have to invest in. Insanity Clicker is on my wish list, but really shouldn't. The only reason I'm keeping it is because of the visual assets of the enemies, but every review of the game says it's not that good. Ultimate Custom Night is an expansion of Five Nights at Freddy's, if anybody's still interested in playing them, where you can customize Five Nights at Freddy's. Dark Deception is a weird looking game that, from best I can figure, is made by an insane person in the style of Pac-Man in 3D. So you run around a creepy hallway collecting those purple gems like Pac-Man pellets, and the monkeys chase after you. And I have no idea what the lady with the white hair does. Dead Frontier 2 is free to play. Trick or Treat looks like an RPG Maker game, is free to play. So it seems like Valve and Steam had to struggle to find even a few worthwhile free-to-play games that were horror based. A lot of these do not look that good. Now, also, this game is labeled free instead of free to play. What does that mean? I'm not 100% sure. So at this point, that's the highlighted games, and it isn't the biggest of selection, really. It's not that good of a sale, particularly if you're just not into horror games. And then you could subcategorize it and look at like more horror games and zombie games and vampire games, or you could click here and see all the specials whatsoever. But all the specials are basically every game that's discounted on Steam. And when we come over to my wish list, we'll see that that is quite a lot. In fact, it's half of the wish list. So right now I've got what you typically would want to exclude early access, exclude pre-release, and exclude VR only games from the wish list. So I can only look at just things like that. And I've got this filtered by discount. So in this hugely long wish list, there's a lot of games, and I'm still midway through the process of cleaning up the wish list, and you're not seeing anything above 90% discount. There is also potential out there. It has been done before. It probably will be done again, where people raise the base price of a game and then say it's 90% off, but it's actually not at a historical low price. There are several plugins you can install in Chrome, and you can shop on Steam via Chrome to see what the historical low price is, if there's perhaps a better deal somewhere else to get the game, depending on not whether you want to shop at a different storefront. Some storefronts will give you Steam keys, some storefronts won't, so you got to be careful about that too. I don't believe Good Old Games would ever give you a Steam key, for example, but they will do pretty high discounts. But then again, Good Old Games is a curated experience web store, so you can't have all the games you probably want on that store front. But yeah, nothing is above 90% on my wish list, and also nothing is below the price of, I would say, I think 49 cents is probably that as far as Steam would let you. And I just want to kind of quickly scroll down here and not talk about each of these games. If I see something that is hugely interesting, then I might point it out, but I'm gonna try to minimize this for the most part. There's a lot of games here. The Kane and Lynch series, for example, it's not particularly a good series, but it's going for a buck each, and at a buck, the historical relevancy there seems kind of high. Seems worth it. We'll run into a lot of anime games too, some of which are for adults in the sense that they have nudity and sexual content in them, some of which are more for the general audience. Like Deus Ex Mankind Divided, 85% off, $4.49. It's probably a pretty good deal to get that, but also you'd have to be careful. Is it $5 for the base game, or is it $5 for the main game plus the season pass? Because if it's $5 to get in the game and then it's another $25 or even $20 to get the season pass, you're still paying a pretty high price. And then also you have things like Murdered Soul Suspect that are Japanese niche games that are highly unlikely to go on discount, so $4.49 still doesn't seem like it's much of a deal. I believe Trine 3 has been announced, so there's some relevancy for Trine. Let's see, what else is there worth mentioning here? A lot of games. Galgun Double Piece at $8 is probably the best point you'd ever get this. This is the on-rail shooter where you're shooting the clothes off of anime girls. But I don't think that there actually is any nudity in this game. It's not tagged with a user tag of nudity. Unfortunately, also there's a problem now that Steam has opened the door to saying no to censorship, which I fully support and agree with. The thing now is that a lot of game developers are going in and patching their games, or at least they might be going in and patching their games to remove any censorship that was existing previously, which is only really a problem in the fact that I'm covering games on YouTube and Twitch, and my Twitch is really just a backup of my YouTube. So it's the next step that we're gonna need for game makers is like a DLC patch to re-censor games or censor games, so I can make this appropriate and advertiser friendly for some of the games. Also, a lot of the tags are not super explicit in the sense that they don't explain themselves. There's a few games on my wish list of games that I believe I've already covered, but I didn't own them on this Steam account. There's only about 5 of them. I believe World of Goo is one of those games. So if somebody wanted to do me a major favor and gift me World of Goo, that would be great. There are other ways to gift me games, by the way. If you have a Steam code from some other store, you can just send it through Twitter direct message. That's where the Humble Bundle might be very useful. If you're buying a Humble Bundle and you want, say, most of the games, but you already have a copy of some of the other ones, just getting that Steam code and gifting it to somebody else would be very much appreciated. Right now, my YouTube channel does not meet the requirements of 1,000 subscribers. I did recently go over 301, but in modern time, it's really, really hard to get 1,000 subscribers. It has plenty of watch time. People watch my videos. It's just nobody clicks the subscription button anymore on YouTube. So because of that, I don't run ads. If there's any ads on my channel, it's because somebody somewhere claimed copyright on the music or the video of the footage, and instead of censoring and removing the music, I'm just leaving that there. If my channel was monetized again, I might remove the music more. Generally, that's only a case, a big problem in Lego games with their licensed games. Painkiller Black Edition, another nicher AA title. We're at 80% now. It is such a long list. Like, in December, every day of December, starting on December 1st, we will be covering one letter of the wish list, and we spend at least 3 hours going through every game that's on the wish list, thinking about it, saying, is this of good quality? Does this really need to be a game that I would think about covering, or is it a game that I could just remove and forget about it? Of course, inherently, I need more time than I need more games. Like, I kind of have plenty of games already, but I don't have the biggest amount of options in games. So if I wanted to do, say, a theme of Lovecraftian games for 1 month, there's plenty of Lovecraftian games on Steam and on the wish list, but there's basically none actually in my library that I already own. Same is probably true for fighting games. Like, I don't think I actually own any fighting games. And I'm definitely thinking about several different styles of games that I'd like to try to get into and expand into. Fighting games, Western style RPGs, Japanese style RPGs. Both of those, any kind of RPG would be a huge commitment in time, so there is something certainly to be concerned about. So Mankind Divided Season Pass, for example, here is $3.74, so you'd still be playing close to $10 to play Mankind Divided, which is not terrible considering it's a relatively new AAA game. The Fear series is, I believe, close to 10 years old now. Fear 3 came out in 2011, but I believe Fear 1 came out in I guess 98. So because I didn't finish my thought, because my channel isn't monetized with ads, there's only 2 ways that people can support me. They can support me through Patreon and commit to paying some amount of money per month until they unsubscribe and stop donating that amount of money. That's helpful in a general sense. It makes being a YouTuber a much more realistic career. It allows me to pay bills and potentially hire other people to work with me, and like, I desperately need an artist to make thumbnails. so people click on my videos a lot more. I'd probably consider hiring an artist before I even paid myself out of Patreon. But if you don't want to go that route, or if you just want to do a one-time purchase, friending me on Steam and gifting me a 99-cent game off my wishlist, a $1.75 game, even a $10 game is super helpful, because it stops me from being in a situation where the sales pop up, they pop up at the most inconvenient time, and then I just have to say, well, I really don't have a budget to buy any games. Like, in all honesty, this $1.24 for Gemini Heroes Reborn is an amazingly good deal. I'd love to buy it right now, but I just kind of have a budget of zero, at least for the Halloween sale. And there is a good chance that everything that's on sale right now isn't on sale in the other two sales that happen. So the November sale and the December sale, or I suppose it would be called the fall sale and the winter sale. Yeah, there's a chance that these would all be different, and it'll be the other half of the wish list that's available. Like Mortal Kombat X is a great example. $6.79 is probably not a bad price for that game. A lot of point-and-click adventures are listed on my wish list. I'm far too much of a sucker for them. Cross Sales is a continuation of, I believe, several other simplistic puzzle games that I've covered. It's 89 cents. So that would be another game that's kind of high on the wish list. But I'm imagining that if you're looking through a lot of these games are at least new to you and slightly interesting looking, and might stir some ideas on what you want to buy. Although, to be fair, if you're brand new to buying games on Steam, there's probably better deals than what's on my wish list at this point, because I already have purchased quite a lot of games. I already have a significant library of over 900 games, but the question really boils down to how many of those 900 games are actually playable or worth playing or worth covering, or how many of them I've already covered. Love at First Sight is a weird visual novel psychological horror game where you're dating a one-eyed girl. Let's see. Ukulele is a potential idea. I don't think there's really any horror in this, but it's $12 and it's probably a pretty good game if you're going to give it to a kid, although probably not the best. Let's see, Bulletstorm 4 Clip Edition is $12. I'd love to own this game. It sucks that Gearbox Publishing again did not give owners of the original Bulletstorm, which I already own, some kind of discount or the upgrade for free. So basically this would be a double dip, which sucks. I don't believe I've actually covered Bulletstorm, which is a weird enough game in its writing to justify that, justify coverage. Same definitive Dead Island Definitive Edition, Dead Island Riptide Definitive Edition. I don't believe I own Dead Island Riptide, the original edition too, so maybe I don't need that. I guess I kept Dead Rising 1 on my wish list, so apparently that one is rated positive enough that it is, in my mind, still worth it to cover the first in the series. It's just not worth it to cover the second or the third in the series. I'm trying to certainly train my brain to realize, look, sometimes if the fifth game in the series is the only good game in the series, you just play the fifth game in the series. You don't have to play all the prequels, you don't have to play all the sequels. Assassin's Creed is a great example of that. It's like there's a pretty easy list of, there's not a great reason to play Assassin's Creed 1, but maybe then you would play 2 and Brotherhood, and then you'd probably skip Revelations and 3 and skip straight to Black Flag. And then after Black Flag, you very possibly would be recommended to skip all the way to Origins, and possibly even skip past Origins into Odyssey. And that takes a game series as far as Assassin's Creed, which has, I think, about 9 different games, some of which are side games, down to a much more reasonable 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, it's somewhere between 5 and 7 games on the big point. Battle Chess is discounted. It's kind of questionable this old nostalgic Battle Chess would go down cheaper. It should be cheaper. This really should be 50 cents for as old as it is, but it's selling on nostalgia, and so the price will probably remain high. Shadow of War is $17. Probably should wait till that gets down to $10. Night Trap 25th anniversary is $5.09. Great game to grab and cover. This game is relatively new in its re-release in the 25th anniversary, and it is very historically significant because people in Congress were talking about it and threatening laws, and I believe it led to the formation of the ESRB, so there's a real history there. Let's see, we're just at 66%. There's a lot of things that are on discount, but honestly, if you're getting at 66%, it's not really that great of a discount. 2/3 off the price. Metro 2033 Redux is possibly a game you would want to cover because the Metro series is coming out with a new Metro game, but 2033 Redux is, I believe, the first game in the series, and there's a second game in the series that I'd also probably want to play. I still have a ton of hidden object games on my wish lists too that I'm working to whittle down into a more realistic list. Resident Evil HD Remaster, I think, has some historical significance to cover. $8 is probably the best deal you'll get for that. Could name certainly almost all of these games because there is a reason why every single one of these games that stays on my wish list after I've done my filtering is on the wish list. Like there was very few games that just I randomly added. I want to play Snake Pass for $8. That's probably a pretty good deal. I was recommended by a fan to play Bomber Crew, and it does look slightly interesting. So for $750, that makes sense. I covered The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, but I got it from Good Old Games with the purchase of a graphics card, so I'd like this game to be on my Steam account so I know. Also, I'd like to get the DLC on the Steam account and get back to it at some point. It never really even occurred to me when that DLC originally came out for The Witcher 3 that I should go back to it. So the problem there, I feel, is that the main game wrapped up the story pretty well. Kerbal Space Program is a game I covered poorly on my channel, but it was one of the few games that's not actually on this account, so it'd be some double dipping there. These double dip games are unlikely that I'd ever actually purchase them myself, but they would be helpful because I just having over 900 games on this wish list. Not on the wish list, having 900 games that I actually own makes it impossible to think about going to another launcher and to keep things in two different places. I have to keep things as organized and simplistic as possible, or I'm going to accidentally buy the same game 4 or 5 different times. And that's not something that I want to have happen. Let's see. There's a lot of games here. Homesick is kind of an example of some of the indie games that just never really go down in price. So it's 50% off for $7.50. I'd be cool with paying that, but really it should be $5. But then these small indie developers, maybe they just cannot afford to lower the price of their game because it's the only one game they have, and there's nothing better. There's nothing they can do about it because they are in the middle of trying to develop their second game. I have very few albums as far as music, but I did enjoy the music of the Cat Lady, so this is like one of 2 DLC music albums on my wish list. Of course, I couldn't like make any footage or content on YouTube based around music unless I was just going to talk about it without playing any examples. And see, once we've hit this 15% as far as discounts, you're hitting really people that said, sure, we want to be involved in the Steam sale, we want to show up when people are searching whether a game is discounted or not, but we really are not willing to put our games at a deep discount. But there is also some weirdness with that mentality and that thought, because it's possible that a lot of games have slowly over a couple of years reduced themselves down to $2 by its base price, and going 50% puts them at a like $1 price tag. So then you kind of have to look at your wish list, if you build your own, in 2 different ways. You have to look and see, what are the games that catch my attention that are heavily discounted, doing what I'm doing right now and just scrolling through everything. Sexy Brutale would be a great game I'd love to play for $10. Whereas this actual sex game would be cool to own for 99 cents, but it really just boils down to, I'd like to support the industry and the existence of these kind of games, but there's probably no way I could make any content with it. Like, I'm still thinking about it, but I imagine if I were to play this game, since it's a match 3 puzzle game with nudity, I would play the game and record footage, but I would almost certainly not be able to publish it, and I'd have to record a beginning to end series and have all the videos on my hard drive or SSD before I even started to think about uploading them to YouTube and editing out things, because I just need to see the entirety of the content. Some games, they show 5 nude scenes and you can censor those pretty easily because they're just like 5 instances, 5 seconds in hours and hours of gameplay. Some games, it's non-stop. Princess Maker Refine is the newest Princess Maker game. No, I believe actually this is the remake of the first game for $5.50. That's a pretty good deal for a very niche game. I'm pretty sure there should be more Princess Maker games on the wish list, but I don't see them all discounted. Downfall is the sequel to the Cat Lady, so I figured I'd add that soundtrack to my wish list too. Let's see, and now we're down to 40%. And while I would love to play A Hat in Time, 40% off for $17.99 of A Hat in Time is not the greatest of discounts. You can see this game came out October 5th, 2017, so it's barely a year old, and that's where a lot of this comes down to, is that There's a lot of games on Steam that are very, very old and can discount them a lot themselves, discount the games a lot more than new developers with new games. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, again, 40% off. What Remains of Edith Finch, 40% off. Both 2017 games. Both games I'd love to cover, but you're paying a pretty high premium for that, certainly, if that's the case. I own the Darkest Dungeon, but I don't own the DLC, and so I kind of want to own the DLC before covering it, and I'm a little afraid to play Darkest Dungeon just because of the time commitment on it. Here's the Zero Escape Nonary games, which is, I believe, the bundle, and that's $26.99. Or maybe it's the Nonary games are the prequel to Zero Escape, Zero Time Dilemma. You'd have to double check, but I'm trying to get through this, quickly, so double checking. Princess Maker 3 is 40% off also. Princess Maker, in case you're interested in, is a simulation, daughter raising simulation game that is kind of historically significant. Oddly, Negligee is a visual novel that is historically significant because it is the first completely uncensored game to be released on Steam, and because it's completely uncensored, it's not allowed to be sold in, of all places, Japan, even though clearly it's aping a Japanese anime style, because in Japan, it's easy to forget, hardcore elements have to be censored, blurred, black bars, that type of things. Now, often they aren't censored very well intentionally, but the law says they have to be censored. So there's about 23 countries that the game is not available for purchase, which I suppose that will eventually get figured out by Valve, and the games will be sold in a censored format in those countries, or at least some of those countries. There are countries, of course, like the United Arab Emirates or Saudi Arabia, that are ultra conservative though, and would never let a game like Negligee be allowed. In fact, there are countries out there that either have no video games allowed whatsoever, or a very limited amount. The Corpse Party is a horror RPG series that is older, but it's new to Steam. So there are 4 games in the Corpse Party series that are getting brought over. So that's slightly interesting, because the name is very recognizable. Meanwhile, things like Devil May Cry, even though as Devil in the name, really isn't much of a Halloween game. I wouldn't really put it as a Halloween game. I certainly have thought about the fact that there are so many games with zombies in it that really aren't scary. At some point, I'm going to have to make a extra theme month in which I just play zombie games that aren't that scary, and we call it something like Second Halloween or something like that. Like, because of all the games that are on Steam, a lot of them have a horror element or a spooky element or something. A lot of them could be saved to play in the month of October, but I would never get through all of them if that was the only month I played them. So yeah, Left 4 Dead is kind of a decent example of a game. It's probably not the best example, though. I would say like Zombie, ZOMBI, is a great example of a game that is a zombie game, but probably doesn't need to be played in Halloween. Where horrific imagery games like Grey Dawn, which is a story that's not out yet, Story about a priest who abused a kid and looks like they murdered a kid. That definitely would be something I would save for a late night showing, the latest airtime in October. Here's Mystery Exile. I'd love to play that. It just got added to Steam. It hasn't been available on Steam for a very long time, if ever. It's $11.24. It'll Do Too is also a very good game I'd love to play. But we are down to like the 25% discount, so it really feels more like a token discount at this point. There definitely are instances of games that never decide to. Here's another one of the Rusty Lake games for 25% off. There definitely are some games that never decide to remove their discount, so it's kind of a bit of false advertising, where it's always 25% off, it's always 10% off, it's always some amount of discount. Lust for Darkness is a game I probably could never cover, and it's a Lovecraftian horrific sex nudity game. And there's quite a few of the lewd games on this wish list that I keep running into as I'm doing the wish list cleanup. It's silly. I won't say embarrassing because I don't care really. I wouldn't put them on the wish list if I found them really that embarrassing, and the truth is there's nothing on Steam that is anywhere as embarrassing or as explicit or perverse as what you can find in many other places for free on the internet. Video games really are not anywhere that outlandish. I guess maybe you could rephrase that to say they stay well within the average moral standards of the average internet dweller or internet citizen. Here we have Darksiders 3. It's not out yet, but I would love it. I'm not sure if people could pre-order a game and gift it to me. That's an interesting thought. I'm not sure you could pre-order the game at all. Here's Corpse Party Book of Shadows, which was just added, and there are 2 more that are about to be added. Princess Maker 5. Let's see. I believe Bindi and the Inky Machine was just played by Jacksepticeye, and they just finished the episodic release of that, maybe? Not 100% certain on that. And at that point, well, at this point with Tingami, that's all the games that are actually discounted. So you can see by the scroll bar, that's about half of what's on the wish list. And then theoretically, if you were doing a deep dive on shopping, you would come and sort it by price, and then you would scroll through it again, and depending on whether you're trying to buy a bunch of games that may not be that good, or whether you're trying to buy something that's pretty high quality. You could also sort your wish list by your own personal ranked order, and if you really have like a top 10 list of games you want, that's helpful. I'm trying to get my wish list to kind of make some sense and have a ranked order that makes some sense, but it's probably not going to. Now, inherently there are bugs that seem to happen in the system as far as how it's sorted by price. There's a lot of play now free-to-play games that then have bits of DLC that have to be purchased. There's a lot of games that have some episode 1 is free, but the real price for the full game is much higher, so you kind of have to skip over the free games. I don't think I'd spend much time covering free games anyways. They're free. If you know they exist and you just play them, there's kind of no reason to be critical of them and get back and do a full review, full coverage of a game that any other person could just grab and play. At least that's my attitude right now. There are, though, some free games that have relevancy because they're related to other games that aren't free. So once you get down to this point, you will have a basically random assortment of games that are the same price if you have enough games. So you'll see 49 cents is the lowest price, but some of these games are 90% off, where this game is only 75% off to get to the 49 cents. It's possible a game is available for 49 cents by its default price and it's not on sale at all. And part of the way that I have so many games in my collection is by buying a bunch of 49 cents games. If somebody were to go in here and say they were going to spend 20 bucks and just get the top 40, you probably couldn't find 40 on the wish list, but if they were just to get maybe the top 35 games that are the cheapest on my wish list and give them to me, like, that would give me a bunch of games. I'm not 100% sure that a ton of them really are super worth playing, though, and that's part of the process of filtering out games too. Is I've definitely purchased some games that were super cheap, or I've gotten games for free that are super cheap and bad quality, and then there's really not a lot of motivation in my head to really want to play the games. And then there are some games, like, I'm not sure if the Legacy of Kain series could be played, but I definitely want to own it. I'm not sure if the Kane and Lynch series should be played, but I definitely want to own it. Just to support the industry. Sometimes some of the older games, I like to own them just so I can go find a ROM and not feel bad about running it on an emulator. Phantasy Star 4, for instance, might be an example of a game like that. So yeah, you could definitely, when these sales happen, spend a lot of time shopping. And I personally have found a way to spend a lot of time shopping and then very little amount of money actually purchasing, because it satisfies that urge to window shop. I'm sure a lot of people have figured that out, though. Is like, you go to a mall, walk around a mall, and then actually not buy anything. Shadow Man is a game I'd love to cover. It's a very weird niche game. It's $1.24. That's about the right price for it, though. So yeah, it really is a question that I always have to ask myself: is, do I want to spend $10 and get a AAA game that might be 3 or 4 years old that I'm super excited about playing, or do I want to spend $10 buying a whole bunch of 50 cents games that are just filling out the library so that I could play them at some point as just like a filler episode? I kind of need both, so I can schedule things and keep things scheduled pretty nicely. For example, if a series takes just a few less episodes than it takes to fill an entire month, I might be able to cover another game if I know it's incredibly short. That's gonna be it, though. Like, we could scroll through this whole list a second time, but you really are just seeing these same games over and over again, with the exception that there are definitely games that have base prices, even at $1.99, that are just $1.99. They're not on sale at all. And so you also want to be aware of that and maybe not get suckered into buying something that you don't actually want just because it's on sale. And there might be something better that you do want that is cheaper or the same price. So yeah, that's it for this video. I hope you found something informative of it. Yes, it was basically just an e-bagging session, but I kind of need to do this, as these are the kind of advertisements, the only way to try to ask people to support my channel. So to support my channel, I ask people on a basic free way. I ask people to like this video, share it with your friends, comment down below, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and when you're watching any of my videos, please watch every second of the videos, because all of that tells the YouTube algorithm that my videos are worth watching. Heck, if you watch the video twice, it helps even more. When you subscribe, please click the notification bell so you can hopefully get some notifications. And then if you want to friend or follow me on secondary sites, which it can also be helpful to just have some backups, it's slightly useful if you follow me on things like Twitter or Facebook or Google Plus or Tumblr. Also, you can friend me on battle.net if you want to play me on Hearthstone, which I stream every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And you can friend me on Steam, and that's what I'd like everybody to friend me on Steam. And that information is all down below in the description box. Also, there's a link to my Patreon down below if you want to support me that way. And as I've been saying before, you can friend me on Steam and gift a game just off my wish list, or a game you just want to see me cover. It doesn't have to be actually on the wish list, and those will go to the highest priority. And if you don't want to decide, you can come over here and click on gift cards, and you can send those through Steam to people and gift those also in different increments. Let's see, what are the increments? See, $5, $10, $25, $50, $100, and so you can add any of these and send them to any friend you want. Which that makes it certainly easier. Ideally, as my channel grows, when a sale like this happens, instead of making an e-begging video like this, which I'll fully admit it mostly was, we will have Steam credit that is a little bit higher than 13 cents, and that Steam wallet credit would come from gift cards and gifts, and then we could do more of a shopping experience and say, here's the games that I actually am going to add to the wish list, not the wish list in this case, but the shopping cart. Here's the games I'm going to actually buy right then and there. That's it for this recording. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.